It was a warm summer night when a chilling 911 call shattered the stillness of Somerville. Brandon Barnes, sounding frantic, reported his wife missing. He told authorities that Jessica had gone for a walk and never returned. Jessica Barnes was the kind of person you couldn't help but love. Born and raised in Somerville, she was full of life, known for her infectious smile and compassionate heart. She dreamed of becoming a graphic designer, working tirelessly in her college classes while balancing a part-time job. Jessica was the kind of person who planned for the future. Her Pinterest board was full of dream homes, wedding ideas, and designs for her future business. At 19, Jessica married Brandon Barnes. Friends said she believed he was her soulmate. Brandon Barnes, 21 years old, was the kind of man who seemed unassuming at first glance. Born and raised in the same quiet town of Summerville, South Carolina, he was the product of a modest upbringing. Friends described him as reserved, with a calm demeanor that rarely betrayed his true feelings. But beneath the surface, Brandon harbored deep insecurities about his lack of direction in life. While Jessica thrived on ambition and hard work, Brandon drifted aimlessly, struggling to hold down a job or commit to a plan for his future. He was charming when he wanted to be, able to flash a smile that could temporarily mask his frustration. But those closest to him knew that Brandon's charm could quickly turn cold. His relationship with Jessica was filled with love and promise. In early months of marriage, they were very happy. They do everything a loving couple does. Their marriage seemed like a fairy tale, but after some time, cracks began to form. As Brandon was unemployed and struggling to find direction, the weight of bills and Jessica's growing frustrations with his lack of ambition led to frequent arguments. Jessica even confided in a close friend about her doubts, saying she felt trapped sometimes but wanted to make things work. To the outside world, Brandon painted a different picture. He posted pictures of romantic dinners and smiling selfies, carefully curating the illusion of a perfect life. But beneath the surface, resentment was brewing. Here enters Brandon's friends in the story. Kendall, a 23-year-old with a reputation for bending the rules, was Brandon's childhood friend. Known for his sharp wit and a knack for finding trouble, Kendall had always lived on the edge, cycling through odd jobs and questionable schemes. Victoria, 22, was Kendall's girlfriend, a fiery and manipulative figure with a turbulent past. The couple, struggling with their own financial woes, moved into Brandon and Jessica's modest home earlier in the year, seeking refuge and a fresh start. At first, Jessica tolerated their presence, hoping it was temporary, but their habits quickly disrupted the household. Late-night parties, heated arguments, and a growing camaraderie between Brandon and his friends formed a toxic trio. Jessica often complained to friends about feeling isolated in her own home. Brandon spent more time with Kendall and Victoria than he did with her. What she didn't know was that the three were planning something sinister. August 2nd, 2024, began like any other day. Jessica spent the afternoon working on a design project while Brandon, Kendall, and Victoria lounged in the living room. That evening, Brandon suggested they all go for a walk to enjoy the summer air. Jessica hesitated. She had been feeling uneasy around Kendall and Victoria, but Brandon reassured her, saying it would help her relax. The group then starts walking down a deserted road toward a wooded area. As they entered a secluded patch of woods, the air seemed to shift. Suddenly, Brandon and his friends stopped. Jessica turned to Brandon to ask why they had stopped. Before she could react, Kendall grabbed her arms, pinning her to the ground. Brandon's hands closed around her neck as she gasped and fought back. Kendall held her down, and Victoria stood frozen, her wide eyes darting toward the trees. The struggle lasted minutes that must have felt like an eternity. And then, silence. After the murder, Brandon's demeanor shifted. The man who had just killed his wife now played the role of a grieving husband. He called 911 to report Jessica missing, claiming she had gone for a walk alone and never returned. His performance was convincing. While Brandon was making his 911 call, Kendall and Victoria worked to hide the evidence of their horrific crime. They wrapped Jessica's lifeless body in a tarp that had been hidden nearby, a detail that hinted at the chilling premeditation behind the act. Kendall, ever the schemer, barked orders at Victoria, who hesitated with trembling hands, her fear palpable. The trio moved swiftly, dragging Jessica's body deeper into the woods. Brandon rejoined them shortly after his call, his calm demeanor chilling in its contrast to the gruesome reality of what they had just done. Together, they buried her in a shallow grave, covered hastily with dirt and leaves. The group returned home under the cover of darkness, their clothes stained and their nerves frayed. Inside the house, the atmosphere was tense. Brandon rehearsed his story over and over, instructing Kendall and Victoria to keep quiet. "Stick to the plan," he warned, his voice low but firm. Kendall shrugged it off with his usual bravado, but Victoria couldn't meet Brandon's eyes. The morning after Jessica's reported disappearance, police launched a search effort. Brandon played the part of a concerned husband flawlessly, joining officers and volunteers as they combed through the neighborhood. He handed out flyers, his face a mask of worry, and gave tearful interviews to local news outlets, pleading for Jessica's safe return. But cracks in the story began to show. When asked what Jessica had been wearing, Brandon fumbled. He claimed she was upset the day she left, but couldn't provide a reason why. It was subtle, but enough to raise red flags. Jessica's friends and family, heartbroken and confused, noticed Brandon's odd behavior. He avoided eye contact, his answers felt rehearsed, and his emotions seemed forced. Jessica's best friend, who had been privy to her doubts about the marriage, grew suspicious. Then there was the matter of Kendall and Victoria. While Brandon put on a show, his accomplices were unraveling. Kendall was spotted at a local bar just days after Jessica's disappearance, laughing loudly and throwing back drinks as if nothing had happened. Victoria, on the other hand, was a nervous wreck, isolating herself and jumping at every knock on the door. Forensic teams searched the wooded area where Jessica had last been seen and discovered disturbed soil. Within days, they uncovered Jessica's remains. The shallow grave had not been enough to hide their heinous act. After discovering her body, the missing person case turned into murder investigation. Detectives began piecing together Jessica's final hours, and now they started to investigate everything again. Witnesses recalled seeing the group walking toward the wooded area, and neighbors reported hearing muffled arguments from the house in the days leading up to her disappearance. Brandon was brought in for questioning. At first, he stuck to his story, maintaining that Jessica had gone for a walk alone and never returned. But the detectives were relentless, pointing out inconsistencies in his timeline and pressing him about the strained nature of his marriage. Meanwhile, Kendall and Victoria were also interrogated. Kendall, arrogant as ever, tried to downplay his involvement, calling it Brandon's problem. But forensic evidence at the scene linked Brandon, Kendall, and Victoria to the crime. Soil samples on their shoes matched the burial site, and text messages between the three revealed their detailed planning. The conversations were chilling, casual discussions about the murder, details about the plan, and even arguments over how the money would be divided. One message from Brandon read, "Once this is done, we're free." No more stress, no more Jessica. Brandon was arrested first. Despite his initial denials, the mountain of evidence against him was overwhelming. Kendall, defiant as ever, claimed he had nothing to do with the murder, blaming Brandon entirely. But Victoria, emotionally shattered, broke during questioning. Through tears, she revealed everything: how Brandon had orchestrated the plan, how Kendall had held Jessica down, and how she had stood by, paralyzed by fear and guilt. She also revealed the motive. She told that
Jessica Barnes was just 20 years old when police say her husband strangled her. Now, this happened back in August down in South Carolina where she was living. Jessica Barnes disappeared in August. South Carolina police say she was murdered. Her body was recently found in a wooded area, and her husband and two female roommates were arrested in connection to her death.
Murder wasn't just an act of rage or frustration. It was the culmination of weeks of planning, driven by greed. Unbeknownst to most, Jessica had taken out a $250,000 life insurance policy shortly after their marriage. It was meant to secure their future, a gesture of love and responsibility. But to Brandon, it became the ultimate escape route. He had discovered the policy months earlier and saw it as the perfect solution to his problems. As the bills piled up and tensions in the house grew, Brandon's resentment toward Jessica only deepened. He believed the money would give him and his friends a fresh start, a way to escape the shadows of his failures. Kendall, always on the lookout for a payday, didn't hesitate to support the plan. Victoria, though initially reluctant, was eventually swayed by the promise of financial freedom. Her confession was enough to convict all three. The trial was a media sensation, with every shocking detail laid bare. Brandon's cold, calculated actions stunned even the most seasoned courtroom observers. The prosecution presented a damning case, highlighting the insurance motive and the premeditated nature of the murder. Kendall tried to downplay his involvement, but the evidence was overwhelming. Victoria, whose cooperation with law enforcement earned her a reduced sentence, expressed remorse, though many questioned the sincerity of her tears. Brandon and Kendall received life sentences without the possibility of parole. Victoria, despite her cooperation, was sentenced to 25 years behind bars. Jessica's family, while relieved by the verdict, spoke of the unbearable loss they endured. Jessica was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a friend, and a bright light extinguished far too soon. Jessica's family turned their grief into action, founding a non-profit to support victims of domestic violence and financial abuse. They worked tirelessly to honor Jessica's memory, ensuring her story served as a warning about the dangers of unchecked resentment and greed. For those who knew her, Jessica's legacy was one of kindness, ambition, and resilience. Her tragic end became a beacon of hope for others, a reminder that even in darkness, justice can prevail.